Lamed Hammer base. Yeah, we're not right now we're 31 bab behind here. By the end of the evening, we're 29 bab behind. We got to Kaisla Nishka, which is when I floundered out last Thursday. But we'll start a little bit before that because so there's a little bit of background material. Let's start from. Let's see, where should we start from? Let's just start from there because we're going to be able to fill you in as we go along. The second to last narrow line. Karsla Nishkav. How do we know that in the case of a person who is who's as relations, who's at the receiving end of relations, that he gets? We're talking about males and with animals here. How do we know? We don't know how there was Koris Linishkav. Now, what does it mean we don't know this Koris Linishkav? On top, the Gemara had actually taught us that there is such a thing as Koris for the person who is in the female position, because it said there, the Rabbi Yirmiyah said, name Rabbi Avo, if you look about 6 or 7, no, more than that, about 10 or 12 lines up, it says, Rabbi Yerushalmi said, "Nemar kan kodesh." It says here kodesh by mishkav zachar, by homosexuality. Even nemar gam kodesh ba'aretz. It says malachim kodesh ba'aretz. Atlami kodesh mikodesh, and you learn the kodesh from the word kodesh, and that kodesh where it's from the word toeva, where then by toeva it says that there's koris. But the thing is, Rabbi Shmuel, though that was actually an attempt to learn out koris for the nishka, for the person in the female position, according to Rabbi Shmuel, we're saying it doesn't work. It's a bit of according to Rabbi Shmuel, Eilim Meidim Min Alamed. You can't learn, in Ganshatz, you can't learn out if A from B and B from C. The Bavli, it's only in Kachim. But in the Yerushalmi, anything in Shas, you can't learn out A from B and B from C. Meaning transitive, taking A from C. Can't do it. So therefore here, we're according to that drasha, which we said before, here it says Kadesh, and Malachim says Kadesh, and there it says Toeva, and elsewhere it says Toeva, will work with Rabbi Shmuel. So therefore, according to Rabbi Shmuel, we don't know that the person who is the Nishkav, the person who is in the female position, that he gets Kares. And as well, we don't know that Onesh L'Nishkav, the penalty of death penalty for the person who's in a female position in a homosexual relationship. We don't know where to find that, both according to Rabbi Shmuel and according to Rabbi Akiva. Now, here the Shayat Yisrael puts in a pasuk, which does it put it in here? Yeah, he puts it in here, and I think he's right. He says here, Tamulomar. So he says, you know what? There's an extra pasuk. Oh wait, he doesn't put it in here. He puts it in later on, I think. Does it put it in here? Yeah. Yeah. This is actually talking about behemoths, not about homosexuals. My mistake. It's talking about where you're the female position vis-a-vis an animal. The animal is the male, and you're the female. So in any event, so here he tried this. So puts in a pasuk. And this based on Pnei Moshe, really. He brings a pasuk Shmos basic ches kol shechem behemah mos yimos. Anybody who lays with an animal is put to death. If that's not necessary for the person who lies with an animal as a male, because we know that from elsewhere, right? There's a pasuk on the top of the page here. So inland and ishkav. So therefore, we say it has to do with the person who is being laid with as the female, and that he gets an onish as well. Uksiv. Then the Gemara goes on to say, and we're in the first wide line now. Uksiv, and it says adjacent to that pasuk about kol shochev meimam mos yumos. So ve'ach l'elohim yacharam. Anybody who sacrifices to any other god other than our God, it gets cherem. Cherem here means the death penalty. So from this we derive from these two psukim. From this juxtaposition, I should say, of the person who lies with an animal to an oived avodah zarah, mazav skila b'kares, just like we know that for avodah zarah you get skila and kares. Abzeh, so to the person who lies with an animal, skila b'kares, there is skila and kares as well. My might be now. What's the difference between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva's perspectives? I'll tell you. It says more. If you have relations as a male with a male and as a female with a male, you got that? Okay, you take both positions in the homosexual relationship. You're the male at one point and the female at the other point. Okay? So if you do that, I'll die to Rabbi Shmuel, it should be Chayev Shtayim. So to switch around. Chayev Shtayim is liable too. What two is he liable for? To Mishkav Zachar and Lo Yeh Kodesh. Because Rabbi Shmuel learns that Lo Yeh Kodesh applies to Mishkav Zachar. So he's liable to two. I'll die to Rabbi Kiva, Rabbi Kiva, it should be Eino Chayev Elechos, because he doesn't know that Lo Yeh Kodesh is a prohibition by Mishkav Zachar. So there, he learns out from Zachar Lo Tishkav Mishkavei Isha. He learns that the prohibition is Lo Tishkav, Lo Tishachev. That we can read it Lo Tishkav, but also read Lo Tishachev. So both the prohibitions, as the male and as the female in the homosexual relationship, are both learned from the same pasuk. So there's only one prohibition. Once you've been doing homosexuality, you might as well try both sides out, because according to Rabbi Akiva, because you only have one prohibition between the two. Wait, money's worth, right? According to Rabbi Yishmael, you have two prohibitions. Each one is a separate prohibition. One Lo Tishkav. That's for the male, from a male perspective. Lo Tishkav, which is from the female perspective. Okay. Now, same thing with an animal. I'll die to Rabbi Kiva. Ben I'll die to the Rabbi Kiva. Ben I'll die to Rabbi Shmuel Chayev Shtayim. The two prohibitions here. One is Kodesh, which is a generic prohibition. The other is Shoich V'im Behema. Okay, those are the prohibitions. I'm not sure if that's is that the two. No, sorry, those are not the two. There's rather the two psukim by Behema. In other words, it's not like Mishkav Zachar where there's one pasuk, there's two psukim. One's Kol Shochem Behema Mos Yumos, and the other is Visha Sheitain Shchavto B'Behema Mos Yumos. One is in Shmos and the other is in Vayikra. So therefore, the two are psukim over there by Behema. So therefore, no matter what, you get two prohibitions. Okay. If you have related to the Zachar and with the Behema, everybody holds Chayev Shtayim. You're liable to two prohibitions because Zachar and Behema, everybody holds the separate prohibitions. Nishka Mizar and Behema, and the receiving end, also Chayev Shtayim, everybody holds two prohibitions. Shachav Shnei Tzchorim Keachas. What if Hele Machas? You had a relation, went to one of those bathhouses, and had relations with multiple partners, right? So you will die of AIDS. But besides that, alright? So yet, if you did it b'shoigig,
there's no indication whether it was protected or unprotected.
Right, there's no indication. So, Shabbos stays kachas, me'achas shemischayim al yodo shnayim, since two people are going to be liable as a result of him, it's a fascinating svara. Chayev Shtayim, he's liable too as well. So amazing svara, because it's really helei machas. But it's gufim mechulakim. Right, it really had this part before, but we never had in regard to homosexuality. So it's gum chulakim, it's a separate body, so it's like ba shalosh noshi be'elei machas. You had a few blot ago, so yeah, if for each one you're liable separately, right? Even though for you it was one period of forgetfulness. Nishka mishtei yitzchan kachas, and the same thing is true if you were on the female end of things and two males had relations with you. Since via two people are going to become liable, Chayev Shtayim, he's liable too as well. Tani, we learned that Zochar lo asobo es hakoten kigodol. By homosexuality, we don't say a child is like an adult. You don't kill a child for homosexual relationships. However, by behema also bos haktana kigedola. By an animal, if the woman is a ketana, it's equivalent of a gdola, meaning that it doesn't matter how young the woman is who had relations with the animal, she might get off the hook, but the animal, is put to death. Okay? What do you love for?
That's ridiculous.
Why?
Because das has nothing to do with the animals.
Right. Well, no. It's not. No. It's not the age of the animal. It's the age of the human being with whom we had relations.
When it says by animal, we don't distinguish between.
That means we don't distinguish in the female. The animal is a male and they have relations with the human female. Doesn't matter how old the female is. Even though the female is not being put to death, the animal will be put to death.
Okay. Was that because they say that's Yankel's animal?
Yeah. By the way, we don't pass in this way.
We don't.
We don't. We pass in it comes pass in if it was b'shoigeg. If the man, human being's not killed, the animal's not killed either. Okay, it's coming up. It's coming up. Okay, but at this point, the Gemara sounds like it makes no difference.
You assume it's not the animal's fault. I mean, it's the human being that usually entices the animal to do whatever he or she wants. So if the child doesn't have das, so it shouldn't be the fault of the animal either.
Okay, but that's not what it says here. Okay, now anyway, it says the more. It says you don't put the animal to death unless the girl with which the animal had relations was at least 3 years old. Okay, because that's the halacha, that a bia with a woman who's less than 3 is not going to be bia. Okay? Rabbi Barchi asked Rabbi Zira a follow-up question. Mara Rabbi Shmo Tapalam Vav Rav. Tap 71. Mara Rabbi Shmo Rabbi Kiva Lecholik B'Zachor U'Bevema. Why they argue about Zachor and Behema? How many prohibitions do you transgress? Whether it's 1 or 2, and then how many we made the drashos. U'Visharka, right? So inevitable. There's no other by any other erva. There's no problem, right? We say that. The same prohibition is for the shochiv and the nishkav. We don't need separate psukim for the person who acts the role of the male and the person who acts the role of the female. We always assume that there's reciprocal liability and everybody gets put to death or gets the penalty. How come here it's not true? By shochiv and nishkav, by mishkav zocha, by homosexuality and bestiality, we need separate psukim. Says Moram Alesa, he said, all other rights are based on relativity. What do I mean by relativity? They're related, right? So the relationship is reciprocal, right? However, by animals, I mean, some people might be related to animals, but by animals and right. So, nice breeze. By animals and by you guys are not sitting far enough away, right? by animals and by homosexuality, there is no relationship, and therefore it doesn't apply. So says what Sifun. They ask the question: Arei Nida? What about Nida? Ain't Sibo Sher? A Nida Sher Bosa? There is no reciprocity in the prohibition of nida, right? It's not based on relationship, on araya of that type of arayas. It's just nisatuma. Yet there we don't bother looking echad for shoichev, echad for nishkav. Why don't we look for a prohibition for both? Says more, it doesn't matter. There, I'm sorry, it's still part of the question. Should be 7 nechol, that means should be below nechol. Then Moshe changes it. There was no issue. Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Kiva, they start looking for psukim. They didn't start arguing about Nita. Why not? So says the Gemara, Rabbi Yirmiyah b'Sher Avos became the chsiv kreva. Since it says there's a Gzeir Shabbat. It says kreva, do not come close to reveal nakedness by all the other arayos. And it says kreva, do not draw close to reveal nakedness by Nida. So therefore there's a linkage. We said that whatever applies to other rights applies to Nida, and therefore we don't need a separate pasuk for the layer and the layi. We assume that they're both reciprocal, as opposed to by homosexuality and bestiality, where you need separate pasukim for the layer and layi. Okay? Says Rabbi Chia Bar Ado, B'Sher Chia said, Fairly Shabanidas Timoso, Los Yigabagalos Evoso. He says, it's in shot. Actually, he is just quoting the fact that it says Lo Sikravu. But Ram Rabbi Serapun, he Baal Tikrav, he Lo Sigolet. The pasuk adds a superfluous language. Baal Tikrav means don't come close to her, Lo Sigolet means don't reveal. But one metaphor for relations would be enough. Why need 2 metaphors in the same pasuk, Lo Sikrav and Lo Sigolet? So it's like Yimenu Inyan, right? We darshan it like this. We say that this we need both. We have both, in the pasuk by Nida, one is going on the shochem, one is going on the nishkav, one is going on the lei, and one is going on the layer. Azal isha, new issue. Says more. Azal isha amaviyasa behemo aleh minayin. How we know warning that a woman should not have not bring an animal upon her as in lieu of a male. Says more because Paul says v'sholo samalivnei behemo l'rava. A woman should not stand before an animal to have relations with him. Tavalu, it's a disgusting thing. Koch is benayim against course in such a case because it says kikolat shayase mikolato ebo so weile. And if he does one of these repugnant things, so they'll be excised. Onish benayim, how is the death penalty to boot? Because it says, if a woman stands before an animal to have relations with her, you shall smite down dead, as the woman and the animal, most you sue the man bum, right? You learn out, without getting into the details here because it's not necessary for us. You learn out Arega from Arega, Skila from Skila, and Mayabon from Mayabon. In other words, there's a whole drush which was developed over the past few days, and here's an extension thereof how to know that it's exactly Skila, not for us. Says in our above our memo boy. This is really going back on our Mishnah. This is a new issue. So about our Mishnah. Our Mishnah said we kill the animal in the case of bestiality for two reasons. One is because it causes a stumbling block. It's like a leaf neiver type of thing, right? Since it causes a stumbling block before the human being, so therefore we stone it. And that's called takolah, right? Takolah means a stumbling block. The other reason is because of kolom, because it's embarrassing. Because after Yankel's gone, everybody's going to say, yeah, there's Fido, with whom Yankel was Mizana, right? So that doesn't look good for Fido. It really doesn't look good for Yankel. So therefore, we put the animal to death. So what about the following case? Where you had relations with the animal, b'shoigeg. You didn't know that the animal was supposed to have relations with an animal. You lived in 20th century America, you thought that's what people do, right? So in any event, so since that was the case, so in that case we stone the animal. Now, mites, I told you we don't. Maraponim speaks about it. We don't. But he thought that we do stone the animal. And he's saying in that case there's no cologne. There's no takola. What's the other? Yeah. There's no takola. Right? There's no takola, right? Because the guy who did it with the animal doesn't get put to death because he's a striking, right? He was unintentional. There is kalo. There's still embarrassment that people are going to say, oh, Yankel, that's the dog with whom you were Mazana, right? So therefore, and Yankel, of course, is alive, so it's even more difficult, right? Right now it's about Tshuva. So it says the more, so in that case we kill because of kalon. We kill because of embarrassment, right? Rishim boy, and Rishim has like this. It must be that the reason because of kalon, and not because of that call. If you plow with your animal on Shabbos, right? You're Mechal Shabbos, you go plow with him. Do we kill the animal? No, not unless we want to barbecue, right? So in that case, we kill the animal because he glad plow on Shabbos. Viptura, right? It's exempt. So it must be that the only reason we kill is because of kalon, because of embarrassment. Because in Chol Shabbos it's not as embarrassing, because it's not as repugnant. But bestiality, that's embarrassing. So that's why we kill in the case of bestiality, because of kalon, not because of takolo. So you know, our Mishnah said takolo also you kill because it was a stumbling block. Must be the primary reasons because of kalon. So it says the Gemara, Leischa ela ke'adon. Says the Gemara, how do we know that indeed we killed even because of takola? How do we know this is such a svara? Okay? So it says more. Now the truth is, remember again, we don't kill ever because of takola only. But how do we know there's such a svara at all? Says more, I'm glad you asked. So it's Gemara the Mara Shori. It's a kaspa muzava masula matzavim. There's gold and so silver and gold they made for them. Atzavim is avodazoros. Lamani koreisun enksiv kat. It doesn't say in order that they should be eradicated, they, elamad ikares, in order that he should be eradicated. What does that mean? Command amar, it's like somebody who says, shachuk tami the palon, grind so-and-so's bones, the palon of so-and-so. The apik bray, he caused his son to go tarbus bisha. It says avda, but it should be tarbus bisha. He caused his son to go off the derech. So therefore, you grind up the stuff which caused the stumbling block. Okay, the gold and silver caused the stumbling block. We're upset at the gold and silver, but it's not a cologne because cologne is only sexual things. This is just a takola stumbling block. We see if there's such a svara. Now, is it ever used halacha l'maisa by itself? It doesn't seem that way, but it wasn't a superfluous line in the Mishnah. There is a pasuk here, which in Yoshua, which they're basing upon this, the concept of takola existing and being a legitimate concern. Okay? Halachachas. Hamagari for blasphemer. And Uchayev Achivash Hashem is not liable until you mention God's name explicitly. In this case, every day, they don't mention the Shem Avaya, his name Yud Kei Vav Kei. We cross-examine the witnesses based on a kinui, based on a nickname for a Kodesh Baruch Hu. For example, Yaki Yosi is Yosi. It's a Makalo is B'Shem. Has been, instead of saying that Hashem smites Hashem, you say Yosi smites Yosi. Right? You don't mention Hashem's name. Nigma did. At the final, when the judges finally conclude, and they're going to put the guy to death. So then, what do? They have to actually have the testimony verbatim, the way it was supposed to be said. So, lo yuhargim kinui. You couldn't kill just on the basis of a kinui, because the defendant will say, "How do you know I ever said the real name?" They never said the real name in court. So what do we do? Take everybody out of the courtroom. We only leave the greatest of the judges. And he says to witness, and more mashishamata beferush. Say what you heard explicitly. And he would say it. But what time is it? Oh, so this is fast, right? Yeah. Okay. Did you say it ahead before I came in? V'adayonim and the judges. It's fast. V'adayonim I know Gorshai made a mistake. It's not the greatest of the judges, the greatest of the witnesses. The superior of the two witnesses. And Voimela and the Dayan says to him, and more Mashishmat and Ferush. Say especially what you heard. Boy, man, he would say it. This time it said Yishem Hashem. For Dayorim Moimdim, Dayorim Ragleim, Dayorim would stand as he was doing this, because they would rip their clothing. They would never repair it. Thank you. Vasheni Omer, the second witness, he doesn't have to say it over again. He just says Anishama Nikamo. I heard the same thing. About Shlisha, the third witness, if there is one, Omer, he also says Apanikamo. I heard as well. We know a warning against blasphemy. It says Elohim Los Kalel. We learn it says God you shall not curse. Curse me not. How do we know that you get cursed if you do so? Ishki Kalel Elokav. Somebody curses his God, no Sachadosh bears with his sin, and that's talking about curse. No king killed in court in a cave. Shem Hashem. He who mentions the name of God, which here means in a negative way, Moisi must be put to death. That's nice, according to Rabbi Akiva, it seems. Those names are much mentioned here, but Rabbi Shmuel, like Rabbi Shmuel, Elohim, and this Elohim Los Kalel, you know that's going on according to Rabbi Shmuel? Who would that be going on, Elohim Los Kalel? Elohim Los Kalel, according to Shmuel. Judges. So he says it's going on judges, so where does he know the warning against blasphemy, right? So he says more, so make a kav chomer. Interesting kav chomer. If on judges who masir, there's a warning not to curse judges. Lo kol shekain al klim. It's certainly true about appellations of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. There's a law not to curse, G-D, damn it. That's considered to be mekala b'kinuyim. It's a law, but not supposed to say things like that, right? Imal kinuyim hu onush. If it's he's punished on the kinuyim. Kares. Oh no, that's. I take that back. I think kinuyim here just means ado koyin elokim. I take it back. It's not an English word. only kinui in Hebrew. Adokoyin Elokim. And then you get chorus. And certainly then you're punished on the divine name and the tetragrammaton. Those who learned ala kinuyim basara, that on Adokoyin Elokim you only get a lot. The chorus or Shem HaMiyuchad. The chorus you get only for the special name of God. B'misa. No, I read that wrong. What? There's warning and chorus of Shem HaMiyuchad b'misa on the special name of Kosh Baruch Hu. There's death. So actually, there was chorus on this, on the kinui. Each time that those who learned. So that's the first brisa. Each time there's a second brisa which says Akunuyim Basar, that on the descriptions of Kodesh Baruch Hu Adokoy Elokim is only a lav, not chorus. Shem HaMiyuchad on the tetragrammaton, on that the tetragrammaton. Is it tetragrammaton? So without the tetragrammaton. If you hold out kinuyim, there's fourth line down here brings out bright says that on kinuyim on appellations only has Torah warning a lav Hashem Yuchad on the specific name of Kodesh Baruch Hu, then the misa of course is potential death and chorus. Man kinuyim Azariel says that on the kinuyim, on the nicknames, there's a lav, the chorus and a chorus as well. Elokim los kalel. He learns it out because it says Elokim los kalel. Elokim is one of the kinuyim, one of the descriptions, not the actual name, right? And it says here that he bears a sin. The chorus, it assumes the chorus. Hashem Yulam Misa. I don't know that on the according to him that the ineffable name of God is by the death penalty. No, because it says he who matches the name of God in proper context is put to death. Madam Ahil says on the other hand, Al Kinuyim, then on Adokoyin Elokim, it's only a warning. Elokim Los Kalel, that he also learns out from Elokim Los Kalel. But Al Shem HaMiyuchad b'misa uv'kares, that which he said, that's which unique name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's death and there's excision. Okay, Shem Hashem, you must. Somebody who pierces the name of God by blasphemy, he gets put to death. A person who curses HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's something else. Rabbi Yitzchak says, Zoso merits. Getting back to our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says that the whole time they use the euphemism Yossi. They don't say the Shem Havayah. So Samaris, he says, if from this we can deduce Shedonim Misofik, that you can sit in judgment even though you're not sure exactly what you're judging. Because on a technicality, they really don't know what they're judging yet, because the Shem Hashem was not mentioned, right? They said Yaki Yossi is Yossi. They didn't say use the Shem Havayah. So therefore, if we can still deliberate, it means that we can do much of the court process without having proper testimony, without having proper witnesses. Okay, is that clear? Yeah? Okay. So it says the Gemara,
except that the witness will, the chief witness will be asked exactly what words were used.
Eventually, right, but that's the point.
I just didn't understand back in Amadal how the second and third witness could say, and I heard like the first one.
I assume that they're present.
I thought that was the idea.
Yeah, I think call out that means to take out all the spectators.
Oh.
You have to empty the gallery. Okay? What's this case in which you can possibly suffer? A plain ragas hanefesh. If they say so and so killed, you're going to judge them without witnesses? What do you mean? That you judge our witnesses? That can't be. That can't be that you judge him and assume the witnesses are going to come later. Would we grab a person in the marketplace and degrade him to such an extent that we run a court before the witnesses got there? It's disgusting. It's not fair. So that can't be what it means. with Donimi Suffolk in other cases other than this one. Rather, Elokeni, which means like this. Ploni Aragas Nevish, you say so killed somebody. And here is witnesses that he killed somebody. He remains in Tfisa, he remains in prison until his Eidim come. That's the Chiddush. Donimi Suffolk means, in this case, we don't know that we didn't hear the actual words of blasphemy until the very end. But normally what it means is that in a case where it's necessary, where the witnesses are going to take some time to get here, so we set up this new mechanism. What new mechanism did we set up? Jail, right, prison. And that's what it's telling us. Studying Misafik means we put him under lock and key, Misafik, in custody until we can actually judge the case. Okay?
That's a new concept.
It's a new concept. It's on the Bavli. Right. No jail in Bavli. Right.
There was something mentioned.
Prison, not jail. Oh, no, I'll tell you where it's mentioned. It's mentioned if you hit somebody, Vinika, if you hit somebody and you don't know if he's going to die yet from that wound, so you hold the guy in jail until you can tell.
Well, the notion of kippah.
Kippah's afterwards. It's a penalty phase.
Starving to death.
Yeah, that's a penalty phase. Even though started to death, there's some lesser form of punishment, but that's after the fact. It's not. Jail is before the fact. That's what we're saying over here. I mean, at least, I don't know if you call it jail, call it prison, but before the fact. Okay.
No concept of bail either.
A what?
Bail,
Bail, no concept of bail. Says we're on the third line, wide line. Varmin lo gadaf. Says Mara, do we say, I'm going to translate this like the Ridbaz, do we talk and say the witness blasphemy? In other words, what he's going to come out saying is, may our God smite God, or something like that. That's blasphemy. So it says more, what he says, it doesn't say in the future tense, where the Ridbaz is. He says in the past tense. He said, this guy said, may God do so-and-so. In other words, he doesn't say it in a language which could indicate that it's true blasphemy being stated, but rather he reports the facts accurately. The part of reporting the facts accurately is, of course, to say at some point in time the name of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Says the Gemara, also the name which I said to you just now, also Kilel, he cursed it, and he cursed it with the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The witnesses themselves don't have to tear Kriya again when one of their numbers says Shem Hashem. They were very pious and they did Kriya when they heard the name of God being mentioned in vain, right? So that's what they did. So there they don't have to Kriya over again. Rabbi Shimon Lakashon Mikan Dayanim from our cave, the Mishnah where it says Dayanim stand up and rend their clothes. Dayanim Sheikabu Edus Omdin. If they normally they're supposed to judge sitting down, and the witness is supposed to stand. But if they did stand, as they did over here, then the din on din, it's a valid judgment. And you hear from our case 6 derivatives. And they're conclusive. One of them is I did this twice. Achmamina shis. Achmamina first year for is Kidam Rabbi Shul Rabbi Yitzchak. Right, that Rabbi Shul Rabbi Yitzchak is correct. Rabbi Shul Rabbi Yitzchak said what? Before. Yeah, Shadani Misafik. And he would do the judgment, even though you won't fully be informed until he actually makes a pronouncement at the end. And also we learn out from here that Fachmamina, a derived from here, Kidam Rabbi Shimon Lakish, that Rabbi Shimon was correct. Rabbi Shimon Lakish was correct. Rabbi Shimon Lakish say? Yeah, but if you accept the din standing up, then that's okay. You don't have to actually sit down. Vachmamina, over here you learn, you didn't hear from the blasphemer himself, you heard from somebody else who heard from him. You still have to do Kriya anyway, right? And also here from here, V'achmamina mikan le'eit she'idei do so, that if one witness said his testimony, Hasheni yomer, the second guy could say, Avani kamo, I'm like him, it's all about Shlish yomer, Avani kamo, he doesn't have to say it formally. V'achmamina also hear from our case, Shehu echo min akroim she'misachi, that blasphemy, you can't mend the rip in your shirt. V'achmamina also the Rav Yirmi came on you, it should be koirin. Once they ripped their clothes, Mishar Bishar, the witnesses, when they heard the crime, it should be Shar Rishona Sheshamu. It should be Shar Rishona Sheshamu Shem Yuchad. And the first time that they heard the Shem Am Yuchad, She'ena Tzar L'Kar, they don't have to do it over again. They just do it that once, and they don't have to do it over and over again. But that was over Shlaki speaking. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Yasi, Makshe, Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Yasi asks a question like this. Today we learned Akuzay Zayt Lifnei Ish Ploini. The announcer goes out on so-and-so, the son of so-and-so. Yoitili Sokal, he's going to have to be stoned. Ashavar Avela Ploinis, because he committed so-and-so sin. Uploini, ate of it, so-and-so. Ours the witnesses. Come, you sure there, Los Chus, anybody knows him, him. Yovel Yamik should come and teach us the Chus about him. The kasha is, how are they going to know what his crime was to be Malamed Chus on him if they don't say the Shem Hashem in public? How are people going to know? So I don't see such a big kasha.
They use a euphemism? We say Hashem instead of Reveal, instead of Halakoi.
People are dumb enough not to realize that. Right? They might say Hashem is, King Hussein, Hashemite leader of Jordan. Abdallah, whatever his name is now. Anyway, so that's not enough. So says the Gemara, so if that's the case, how are they going to be Lamed Chus? Says the Gemara, Shomeh? No. They say more or less like you just said. Shomeh, Bibi Shomeh. So Tzarech Likra. You hear that a person who hears from somebody else has to do Kriya. Shamina Shomeh, Bibi Shomeh, V'Shomeh. Oh, wait a minute, I forget what the question is here. Oh. Now I remember. Okay, so says the Gemara, and of course, don't assume that they would say it out explicitly at that point, because we heard before Shamana Shomei Pi Shomei Tzarech Likra, because I mentioned before that the Eidim tear, and then the Dayanim tear because they heard from the Eidim. But Shamina Shomei Mi Pi Shomei V'Shomei Pi Shomei Tzarech Likra, they heard a third party as to Kriya. We never heard such a thing. Only a second party, not a third party. So if that's the case, I'm still not sure what's going on here. Okay, I botched it up. That's the problem. Let's go back a couple lines. He asked a different question where I thought he asked. See, now we learned that if they would say the Shem Hashem then. When they would say the cruz would be Yoitze Lifnei Ish Ploini, the cruz would go out in front of him that he's going to have to be stoned and to commit Avera, and so his witnesses, they do say that the Shem Havaya. The question is whether the people, the onlookers, have to tear Kriya when they say the Shem Havaya in that context. That's the issue. So they say the Shem Havaya is going to have to be stoned. The question is whether you have to actually tear Kriya when you hear that. So there's more, no. Shamana Shomei Mi Pi Shomei Tzarech Likra. We heard the second party. Somebody you heard from the witnesses, he's got to tear. Shaminan, do we ever hear Shamei Mi Pi Shomei V'Shomei Mi Pi Shomei? We ever hear where the witnesses told the Dayanim, and the Dayanim told the executioners that then Tzarech Likra, you have to do Kriya. In that case, there's no Kriya. Malikra Kilas, it should be Kilas Akum. The next line should be over here. If you hear a goy blaspheming, you have to do Kriya. Shminado, let's learn that from here. Rav Shokeh was one of the generals of the Sanhedrin, and he was blaspheming. He ripped his clothing. I'm skipping the next 5 words since we put them in line before. Man Rav Shokei Akum, he says Rav Shokei was a goy. So according to him, we see we do kriya if a goy blasphemes. Man Marisoli says Rav Shokei was a Jew who was a turncoat when there were some forces. Ain't showing we only do kriya for a Jew. Says the Gemara. Time Rabbi Yosef said, makes a difference if you hear the call of Hashem from a Jew, or from a guy. No, you must hear kriya. My time, what's the reason? Ani Hashem Elokei Kol Basar. Tapalam Zainav. I am the God of all flesh. Hamimana Yipoli Kol Dover. For meats or anything be concealed. That's not really important, but the main point is that it's okay Kol Basar. So it's actually a prohibition on the goy to be Megadef, and if the goy is Megadef, they have to their kriya as well. Malik Krobusman said, what about nowadays when people are blaspheming all the time, left and right, on the radio? Says Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Yirmiyah, Shem, Rabbi Yechia, Bar Bo said, and Rabbi Chizah, Rabbi Yirmiyah, Shem, Rabbi Yochanan said, Misha Rabu HaGoytfin. Since a lot of good funny, since a lot of blasphemers blaspheme the Kriya, they no longer do Kriya. Says Malik Kriya Kinuyim. Do we do Kriya on Kinuyim? Now this is not, it says it was not Zepatei Moshe takes out, because obviously we in the answer already, you can't do Kriya B'Zman HaSeh. But what about if you have a, no, I don't know what I just said. That's not true. It's a separate question. Can you do kriya on kinuyim b'zman hazeh if you want to?
But we said we don't do it on the real name, Shem Hashem, so why would you do it on kinuyim?
Because obviously it doesn't hold the previous Gemara. Can't hold the previous Gemara, I think. Anyway, it says more a cool story. Says more Nishmina Miyato. Let's start over here. We got it for Korah. The guy blessed again. He did it again, right? And did it. It doesn't say how many times actually. Nelson Milchama. So finally, Rish got annoyed. He came down off his donkey. If you have a Markota go libi, and he punched him in the chest. And he said, Amalei said, Barkotoi, you stupid Samaritan. Does your mother have enough clothing to give me? Meaning, I had to rip my clothing because of you. I want your clothing now. Right? Because it was in Korea, I blasphemy. So they finally decided just going to punch the living daylights out of him, and that's what he did. Milsa Adamras now teaches us that Rish Lakish was ripping clothing, and the stomach of the guy didn't know the Shem Yud Kevavke. Shakorin al Kinuyim v'Shakorin B'Zman Hazeh. It means that you do Kriya on Kinuyim and you do Kriya in our day and age as well. Says my Mishnah further, somebody serves idolatry. If somebody serves idolatry and one of the forms of avodah, Ketores or something like that, or you put the stuff on an altar for avodah zarah. Sorry, that means somebody who slaughters. The slaughter. Somebody puts the pieces on the mizbeach. Somebody pours libation on the mizbeach. Somebody bows down to avodah zarah. And you said that avodah zarah is a god. Say that avodah zarah, you're my god. Or this people chayav kares and skila. However, if you go over and you embrace from a nashek, and you kiss, and you sweep in front, you tamp down the dirt, and you wash the avodah zarah, you anoint him, you should give the avodah zarah clothes to wear, you give him shoes to wear, you are insane. However, below I say you transgress a lot, but we don't put you to death. Somebody takes in the name of avodah zarah, and somebody who promises on the base of avodah zarah, he transgresses the negative command. And you should know if somebody defecated in front of Baal Por, so that's the way they used to worship it. And somebody throws the stone at this avodah zarah called the mercurial pile, so that's the way you serve the avodah zarah as well. Says the Gemara, we know a warning against the idolaters that they're going to get punished. Minayin says, if they do not serve them, I know you get excision because it says this Hashem will megadef. Hashem he lashes in Yerushalmi and he is eradicated. We've learned that eradicated is the eradicated is chorus. So it says more v'lo megadef. See, I understand. How can you learn about Yerushalmi? What does it mention here? Megadef. That's blasphemy. So it says, how can you learn that Yerushalmi? This is a different avera. Says more Kadam Shem Mechaber, and it's like somebody says to his friend, Girafto. Now it's not a playing of the word Girafto, Gidafto. That's not it. But it means Girafto is called Kara. Your activity is as if you wiped the plate clean, V'lo Shata Baklumi didn't leave anything. Meaning, Avodah Zorah is like Megadef, and that Megadef, he's Kofer B'ikor, denies the Kodesh Baruch Hu. So to Avodah Zorah is like a Kofer B'ikor, and that's he's wiping the slate clean, when he's moving everything off the table as if there's no Kodesh Baruch Hu. Okay? Okay? Okay?
Or can you say that one just leads to the other? First, the person that's Megadef will eventually...
No, because then we still don't know the explicit death penalty. That won't do us enough good. So the Gemara says to take the word marshal, plug it in two words for now. Shemilos and marshal shtaim sheish. It's two people like two who's sitting. They have a bowl of beans in front of them. They didn't have popcorn in the old days. They had beans. They watched television. They ate beans. Okay. Pashat echad as the other. So one of them extends his hand to gear of kol kara, and he takes scoops out the entire peanut tray. V'lo shir b'klum. He didn't leave anything. So the last one, and Avodah Zarah, they don't leave any mitzvah to do because they've eliminated all the mitzvahs by virtue of their denying the revelation. Says how we know they get punished by stoning because it says, "Well, so you show you take out that man, or so you show you that woman, who did this thing, El Sharecha, take him out to your gates." Etc. Uskat them also and stone them with stones, and they shall die. Lo saf, they do not serve them. I would have said Ad Shavakov and Azorship Oilam. Lo saf, David says, do not serve them. So maybe if you just worship Yoshke and Confucius and Buddha, it's not enough. Maybe you have to do all of them. And the Hindus, they have millions of gods. That would take a long time to actually get them all of them. Okay, so it says the Gemara. Today I was in Kmart. The Kmart here in West Shores Park is very heavily Arab. It's the first time, though, I think I ever saw Mamish women covered like in Afghanistan almost, head to toe, including their noses with black cloth. It's kind of a pacha to come here and say, yesh azekan, as they say in Hebrew. It's really right there, middle of Kmart. Okay, says the Gemara, but you can see they're not frum. They're really not frum, because underneath you can see they're wearing pants. So,
they all wear pants.
What?
I think they all wear pants.
Yeah, it could be. Okay. So, it's not sneistic. Okay, says more further. So here it says, Los of Day. So I might say they have to worship all the Avodah Zarah in the world. Because it says Los of Day. Do not worship them in plural. Right? It's very, so it says, how do you know? Each Avodah Zarah you worship, it's the same thing. So Talmud it says, Lo tishtachaveh lohem. Do not bow down to them. Bowing down was included in all the avodas. The law why is it singled out? Lakishta to draw a parallel to it. Ella is a little bit superfluous, but my shtachavoy milcheres my siyochi. Shtachavoy is a deed in and of itself, not connected to any other deed. You're liable for it by itself. So to include any other form of avodah zarah, by each form you're chayav independently of whether you did anything else. So Avagab Rabbi Shimon Lozar Amar. So Rabbi Shimon Lozar says, if you were slaughtered and put the korban on top of his back and libated the wine for the avodah zarah, and not only it's also, you did in one fell swoop, right? Ain't a chayv, it's only liable for one. Moide concede Shim Avda Bavodosa and Bavodas Gavoa and Bavodas Shishtagavoya, even though three avodas can join together if they have the same type. Such as here, the three avodas of cleaning up and preparing it. And you only have one malchus for all three. But the avoda, if you did one thing which is its own form of work, another thing of service, another thing which is a divine form of service, and a third thing which is in the service of bowing down, Shuchayev kolachas v'achas, he is liable for each and every one, meaning you're liable for 3 karbanos.
I don't understand the emotion. What is the bonus good?
Stuff you do in the base of Mikdash for HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
It's what?
Stuff you do in the base of Mikdash and serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Except
he's doing it for Avodah Zarah. So even though if all 3 things that you do Avodah Zarah, according to Rabbi Yaakov, they all fit in the same category, you only get 1 carbon, but if they're for 3 separate categories, like they used to say, I never saw such a thing, but in a Chinese restaurant, you pick, A from, actually I did see it, the first thing in the old days, that thing.
Give them a number.
Right, give them a number. So if you pick one from this menu, another from this menu, another from that menu, so then, in that case, Takachai all 3. Okay, if they're all from the same menu, only 1 liability. To go cross menu, 3 liabilities. Alright? It says more, Kad Ma, Rabbi Shmuel said, Rabbi Shmuel said, B'Shem, in the name of Rabbi Zira, V'lo yizbechu od zivcheim es zivcheim l'seirim. They should not sacrifice any more their sacrifice, or slaughter actually, their slaughters, for the Syrian, for the Avodah Zarahs. So this, you see, even Avodah by itself, you can be liable on. You don't have to do multiple Avodas to be liable. Says Marmalade, it says no proof. Mati Tana Lukochi, that pasuk is brought by the Tana to teach us not to do shchutei chutz. It's not talking about for Avodah Zarah. It's talking about not to slaughter korbanos outside the Beis HaMikdash. And Rabbi Yasser B'Shem Rabbi Yechon said a different reason why it's no proof. That's to teach us that zibech lo tle ba'amum, by going to the makpid on ba'amum. So if you took a ba'amum and sacrificed Avodah Zarah, you're liable as well chayav. Don't think that since in Beis HaMikdash you don't accept the ba'amum, if you sacrifice the ba'amum to Avodah Zarah, you're off the hook. No! Sacrifice Ba'amut Avodah Zarah, you're on the hook just if you sacrifice the real korban. So from here we're not learning that one Avodah in and of itself can be chayav. We don't actually have a source for that at this point. Okay? Ma'ikadun. How do we know that, that's not what we're trying to figure out. So trying to how do we know that Isra Avodah Gavoa applies to Avodah Zarah, even if it's not its derech. For example, for Pa'or, the derech was, the avodah was to defecate, right? Right, instead of defecating, you brought in incense. Right? It's the opposite, right? You're supposed to give it manure, you gave it incense. So how do we know you're chayav? That's not derech avodah. So we're trying to say, we want to bring a raya, so whatever is done in the Beis HaMikdash should done for a avodah zarah is liable. So we tried to bring from the lois b'chor to zivchein l'sir, we said, no, that's about shchutei chutz, and that's no proof for this. It's about karbanos.
Probably has this discussion.
What? I don't think so either. So then he says, what about this one about bringing a Kodesh Baal? And he said, and somebody else says that apostle used to teach us the Kodesh Baal Mum, also you can't sacrifice Avodah Zarah. So how do you know that you can't do stuff which you can do to the Beit HaMikdash? How do you know you can't do Avodah Zarah? And this also, I don't think is in the Bavli, Rabbi Hila's drasha. Rabbi Hila, like Rabbi Hila said, Lo Sasum Kein Lashem Lokechem. Literally it means do not do like this for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In other words, you destroy the Mizbachos of the Canaanim. When you get into Eretz Yisrael, don't do that to Mizbeach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But the way we're dashing it means, Kol Hashem Elokeichem, anything which is unique avodah for HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, Lo Sasum Kain, do not do that to do not do it to any other god, so not avodah zarah. Okay? Says the Gemara, ask the Kasher, Boom Barachil, Boy Kum Rabbi Zir, ask for him Lo Softeim is a cloud. Says, do not serve them, that's a generality. Do not bow down to them, that's a specification, because it's one avodah. Then then it says, do not bow down to another god. Because of a kilo, it's a cloud again. Now that's not actually a cloud in itself. All unfortunately, great difficulty with that. The Meich HaMayim says the best pshat I saw. Says the second cloud says, Kilo shtachvel el acher ki Hashem kanoshmo el kanohu. says God is zealous, and of course He'll be zealous about many things. So actually from the end of the pasuk, which is the next klal. So we have a klal beginning, do not serve. We have prat, bowing down. Then we have a klal again, right? So it's klal uprata klal. Aim a klal. It's klal uprata klal. There's nothing in the klal. The next line is a mistake. It should be hakobi klal. It should be not aim the klal mashaprat. Hakobi klal, because klal uprata klal includes everything, right? So that's the case. But the problem is like this. So what's the problem with that? So the problem is that that's the case. We should include everything, including embracing and kissing the avodah zarah. If it's a klal pratu klal, do not serve. Do not bow down. Hashem is jealous. Then it should be. Then everything should be prohibited. So it says Moray Boom Bar Kana. That's the similar question. It says Bo Kamahili asks a different question. Lo Sasun Kain. Do not do this. That's a cloud generalization. So Vechali Melchoram Prat. Anybody who serves another god. That's his specification. Pilta Hashem not only God Himself. Chazer V'Kila. It's a close generality again. Cloud Prat. The cloud's a cloud. Prat to cloud. Generality specification. Generality. Vakoli cloud should include everything which is similar to the Prat, and it should all be considered to be a liability of avodah zarah and capital punishment, including the ribas on Megave or Menashe, including somebody who breaks it, somebody who kissed. Amalese said, no, you missed the boat. Why does it say bowing down? It says, it's not to teach about himself. Shumaisa, that it's a deed. Rather, it's to teach us that I'm a gafef, that somebody who embraces. Next it should be I'm a nashik. Mechamayim changes it. She'ein on maisa, it's not considered to be a maisa. Now it's a fascinating thing because the Mechamayim explains this very nicely. He says, I now have four psukim. It says lo soteh. Then it says lo shishtachaveh. It says lo shishtachaveh again, and then it says kiel kanoshmo. So actually, cloud, prat, cloud. So the second prat actually is limitation. That's how we know the megafef and nashik are not included. Because cloud, prat, cloud would include other things which are similar to the prat. There's still similar to specification, which could be bracing, and showing any respect to avodah zarah. But here we're saying that no, since there are two specifications, it says lo shishtachaveh twice, so it limits it to something which is an avodah, a true avodah b'fnim, something which is the way we serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and that would not include embracing and kissing. Okay, so that's the end of that. Minayin loim lo eliyato. How do you know if the Yitzel avodah zarah? You are my God, that you're liable for avodah zarah. So says the Gemara. Rabbi Avun b'shem Rabbanan Talmud said, "Vayishtachvu they bow down to the golden calf. They sacrifice the golden calf. Vayomer Elo Elach Yisrael. What was that? They said, "This is your God." Miata says to him, "Wait a minute. In that case, may you're liable if you also slaughter and sacrifice, because that's what they did by the Egel Hazov. They didn't just say Eliyato. You're my God. They slaughtered and sacrificed." So says the Gemara, I'm Rabbi Yosef, says no. You don't need to have the sword sacrifice in order to be considered avodah zarah. You can be avodah zarah even without that. That's just going to tell us the Bnei Yisrael were mahader in the mitzvah of avodah zarah. They did above and beyond what they had to do, right? How so? It says, "Vayishtachvu lo," they bow down to avodah zarah, lo l'gavod, not to Kodesh Baruch Hu. Vayisbach lo, they sacrifice avodah zarah, lo l'gavod, not to Kodesh Baruch Hu. Vayom lo, and they said to avodah zarah, "You're a God," lo l'gavod, not for Kodesh Baruch Hu. So it says the Gemara, "My kedu." What's the bottom line? I'm glad you asked. Nema kan amira. It says here that you said avodah zarah, but nema lao and ba'amir mesis says you said something by mesis by a missionary. Ma'amir amur b'mesis by a missionary. You don't have to do a mice in order to be put to death as a missionary. The fact that you try to persuade people, that in of itself is sufficient. Right? That's Amira makes you liable. Also by Amira Kamaisa. Amira Murakan. So to here, if you say Eliata, you say about a Vazor. You don't actually do a Meiser, just say you are my God. Nasa bo Amira Kamaisa. That's enough to make it the Amira, like a Maisa, same like a deed, and you are liable. Okay, we'll stop here for this evening.